Listen, the best mindset for success is not what you think. And I'm not saying this at random. I'm a clinical psychologist who works with people who are highly successful. I work with ambitious, high performing, very productive individuals. What I've seen in these people, the people who are able to sustain success, is that they have a specific kind of mindset. And it's not the mindset you think. It's not what's publicized online. It's actually something completely different. And I think this needs to be spoken about, and this is why I'm making this video. So let's get into the kind of mindset that actually leads to long-term sustainable success over a lifetime. Because that's what we truly want when we say we want to be successful. We don't want to just have one hit record and then disappear. We want to consistently produce good music albums. We don't just want to have one medal and then we're done. We want to consistently perform at the top of our field. That's what high performers and people who want to be very productive and successful want. And this is how you get it. This is the kind of mindset that's actually going to lead to long-term high performance. And don't just take my opinion for it. I do work with these principles in my therapy practice, but these principles are based on solid scientific research. Over 100 years of research has gone into identifying these specific kinds of mindsets that I'm going to speak about. I'm going to give you 5 in this video. And I'm going to reveal what the underlying theme is toward the end of the video. So stick around for that, because I think once we pull together these different kinds of mindsets into this underlying theme, I think you're going to get the big picture. This is going to make a lot of sense. And then you can carry this mindset forward in achieving the kind of success that you want and becoming the kind of person that you want to be. So let's dive in with mindset number 1. Okay, so the first mindset you want is to prioritize self-compassion over self-criticism. Most of the people in the hustle and grind communities or in the toxic corporate cultures or these very striving-based communities will tell you that you should actually be very harsh on yourself. You should criticize yourself. You should stop being pathetic. You should stop being weak. And you should just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do better. But this underlying message of self-criticism is not healthy to the human psyche. And to prove this, researchers Brains and Chen in 2012 did this very cool study where they had participants recall a specific failure, a personal failure from their own lives, where they felt they really failed themselves. So they had them recall this incident, so bring it to memory, and then they split the people into 2 groups. One group was told to be very self-critical, and the other group was told to be self-compassionate. So they were primed for different things, to deal with that failure in different ways. So the self-criticism group, when they brought up the memory of the failure, they were very critical on themselves. They had to say, oh, I'm so disappointed in myself and I'm so stupid. How could I have let this happen? What's wrong with me? The self-compassion group, on the other hand, were told to deal with the failure as you would speak to a friend who had just gone through a failure. So, okay, it makes sense that you kind of struggled here. You could possibly do better next time, and so on. So the self-compassion group had a lot more empathy and understanding for themselves. Now, which group do you think did better in recalling that failure? Which group do you think was better off after the experiment was finished? While the self-critical group actually had more guilt, they had increased shame, and they were less likely to take action on the things that are important to them. The self-compassionate group, on the other hand, they were more likely to take action in the future. Going forward, they are more likely to lean into the things that actually matter for them, and they felt better. They had higher levels of well-being. So the point here is that even though most people online are shouting at us that we need to do better, and they're portraying this very critical tone to us and telling us to adopt that tone for ourselves, what actually helps us move forward, what actually helps us digest failure in a helpful way so that we can keep moving forward and striving for success, is actually a self-compassionate mindset. The second mindset I want to talk about is being fueled by intrinsic motivation rather than extrinsic motivation. So I'll explain what that is in a moment. For now, what you need to know is that in 1971, a prolific researcher named Edward Deci, one of the most highly published researchers in our field, conducted a study where he took people and separated them into 2 groups, and he had each group solve these specific puzzles. But he told group 1 that they should do it out of interest. Just solve the puzzle out of interest, have fun with it, do it out of curiosity, spark your natural interest, and so on. The second group, he paid to do the puzzles. So he had these two groups do the puzzles for a specific amount of time. And then after the experiment, he said, listen, you can either continue to do the puzzles now because the experiment is done. We just need to sort out some paperwork or whatever else. You can continue to do the puzzles, or you can let it go. The group that was told to do it for fun, they were more likely to continue engaging with the puzzles. They were more likely to lean into the puzzles and to try to solve more of it, and they had a lot more motivation. This was the group that was fueled by intrinsic motivation, which is when you do something just for the fun of it, just because you dig it. The other group, on the other hand, the group that was fueled by extrinsic motivation, meaning they needed something external to do it, in this case, money. They stopped doing the puzzles when the experiment was over. They were less likely to engage with it. They were less likely to pursue it, to put in more effort, and so on. The point of this research is to say that intrinsic motivation, when you do something because you enjoy it, because you dig it, because it's part of your identity, that is when you continue to engage with it. That's when you continue to put effort. Whereas if you engage with it because of some external outcome, because of something, some reward that you're promised, like money, like fame, like fortune, like praise, whatever the reward is, if the reward is coming from outside of the activity rather than the actual enjoyment of the activity, you're less likely to perform in the future. You're less likely to have your motivation stay there. Your motivation declines when the reward is removed. This is why you cannot compete with someone who really enjoys what they do. You can't, because while they are fueled by their work, you're being drained by it because you think you're just doing it for the reward, and you've lost connection with the pure interest and curiosity, that childlike way of engaging with something just because it's so fascinating. You've lost that. You've disconnected from that. And so the second mindset for being successful, for being high performing, is not actually to do something for the reward and to chase it. It's actually to do something because you enjoy it. It's to prioritize intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation. Third mindset I want to talk about is behavior change versus identity change. Having the mindset of changing your behavior versus changing who you are. In 2011, the researcher named Brian and their colleagues did this very cool experiment where they wanted to see if they could influence who votes. So do they actually get to the voting ballot, and do they cast their vote? So they separated, again, people into two groups. One group was told that they should vote, that they should tell themselves that they can control that behavior. So it was a very behavior-focused intervention. The other group was told to emphasize that this is who they are. They are someone who cares about voting. They are someone who wants to vote. So this group emphasized identity change. I am the kind of person who votes. Guess who was more likely to cast a vote in the end? It was the identity change group. Identity change is the most fundamental and most concrete kind of behavior change, because you're no longer just doing something because you think the behavior is important. You're doing it because it aligns with who you are on a deep level. That is a lot more robust, that's a lot more sustainable, and the true high performers that I've seen in my practice are the people who define themselves in relation to what they care about. That's how they define themselves. So if you want to quit smoking, it's better to say, I am not a smoker, or I am someone who cares about my lungs, rather than saying, I need to stop smoking, I shouldn't smoke. That second kind of change is very surface level. It's just the behavior on the surface, and it's not as robust, it's not as resilient. Whereas the identity change changes who you are at a fundamental level, and then all your behavior naturally starts to align with who you are. So the very important point here is that the kind of mindset you want to have, if you want to be a high performer, if you want to engage with what matters to you, is to change your identity rather than just focusing on surface behaviors. Fourth mindset I want to talk about is a willpower mindset versus a systems change mindset. Now, a lot of people in the hustle and grind communities will tell you that you need to focus on willpower. You need to be disciplined. They'll speak to the importance of discipline and how it can change your life and how it's changed their lives. But not many people speak to about how do you change your environment so that your environment works for you rather than against you. Because it seems to be more virtuous to become more disciplined rather than making things easy in your life. For some reason, many hustle and grind communities, they idealize suffering. They think that all discomfort leads to growth, when that's actually not true. And a very interesting experiment to show this was done in 1998 by Professor Roy Baumeister. He's one of the world's leading experts in willpower. What he did was he took two groups of people, and he put the one group in one room, the other group in the other. Group one, he put in a room with freshly baked cookies. So they could smell these cookies, but there was a catch. He told them, you're not allowed to eat these cookies. So he made them sit in that room, smell these amazing cookies, and then said, you cannot grab any cookie out of that jar, and you're going to have to wait here for a certain amount of time before we can go into the next room. So the group that was in that room, they had to use willpower because the cookies smelled amazing, and it's our instinct to want to grab that high calorie, high sugar food. Whereas the second group that he put in another room, in the center of that room, what he put was not cookies, it was radishes. So if you know what radishes are like, it's this vegetable that is not very appetizing. It doesn't have an amazing smell or anything like that. So the theory was that the second group wouldn't actually use any willpower to not eat the radishes. So he had these two groups be in that room for a specific amount of time. And then he said, okay, we're going to run the actual experiment now. And then took them into the next room. In the next room, he had each group try to solve a puzzle. The catch was that this puzzle was unsolvable. So this puzzle couldn't be solved by anyone. It doesn't matter how smart you are. So the point was not which group is going to solve the puzzle. The point was which group is going to persist with the puzzle for the longest amount of time. In other words, which group was going to use the most amount of willpower and keep at it even when they keep failing. This was how he wanted to measure which group would have more willpower. And it turns out that the group that had to resist the cookies, they did not persist in the puzzle as long as the group who had to resist the radishes. Why is that? It's because the group that had to resist the cookies actually used some of their willpower, so they didn't have much left, which told Professor Roy Baumeister that willpower is actually limited. You don't have an infinite amount of it. It's not something that keeps coming. It's actually a limited, finite resource, which means that you can't rely on willpower for long-term success. You just can't. It helps you in the short term. It's a very good break in case of emergency kind of skill, but it's not something that you should rely on because it's very expensive on the brain. The brain has to use a lot of energy to engage willpower. So the people that I've seen that are truly successful in my practice are not the ones who constantly have to use willpower and pure grit to get through their task or their meeting or whatever it is. It's the people who make their environment work for them. The people who don't eat the cookies are the ones who don't keep the cookies in the house, because then they don't have to smell the cookies, they don't have to see the cookies, they don't have to walk a few meters to the cupboard to get some cookies. They would actually have to drive to a nearby store. They would actually have to ask someone to bring cookies to them. In that way, they make it difficult to do the wrong thing, and they make the environment help them to do the right thing. And this is what you want to keep in mind if you want to be a high performer, if you want to be successful one day, is that your environment should work for you. In other words, you should change your environment so that your environment makes your life, both personally and professionally, a lot easier. And there are many, many ways to do that, but that is the true mindset to sustainable success, not a willpower mindset. The fifth mindset I want to speak about is a mindset of workaholism versus a mindset of rest and recovery. The truth is that many hustle and grind communities will tell you that you should not prioritize sleep. You see quotes like, I remember when I was in varsity, I saw this quote on these coffee mugs that said, "I'll sleep when I'm dead." That is the kind of mindset you see in a lot of high achieving communities. The problem with this is that sleep is literally responsible for every brain function that you can imagine. Sleep is how your brain recovers. Sleep is how your brain optimizes itself. When you sleep, you have a healthy brain. And so 7 to 8 hours is very important. A lot of people run on 5 to 6 hours and they think they're doing fine. But if you think you're doing fine on 5 to 6 hours, the truth is that you could be amazing on 7 to 8 hours. Imagine where you could be. You are underutilizing your potential if you're not getting 7 to 8. Why is this? Because sleep replenishes your brain and therefore it replenishes your cognitive functions. Things like memory, things like attention, things like concentration, planning, decision making. These are all important functions and they only recover and they're only optimized when you get enough sleep. And so if you want to perform like an athlete, a gold medalist, you should rest and recover like one. And how do they rest and recover? Well, they take it seriously. They have routines for it. They have systems for rest and recovery. They have protocols because they prioritize it. It's important to them. It's very easy to neglect sleep because you don't see the benefits of it immediately and you don't see the downsides of sleep deprivation until a long time. Don't be that person. If you truly want to be successful, if you want to have sustainable success in the long term, you cannot do that with sleep deprivation. You can only do that with the mindset of rest and recovery. Now, final thing, very important here. I've created an online membership that is a membership for people who like this kind of thinking. The kind of thinking of how do I feel good, but also perform well. That is what I'm trying to encourage in people, is not to just hustle and grind and become workaholics and then burn out and be stressed and tense, but to actually attain high performance from a space of well-being. And that is the theme I wanted you to notice. The theme I told you I'd reveal at the end of the video. The theme with all of these techniques is that all of them help you feel good and do better at the same time. It's not just about performing well and then fizzling out. All of these techniques prioritize your well-being. They prioritize the way that your mind works, that your brain works, that your mental health relies on. Because when that is fine, when your mind is in good condition, that is when you'll naturally start to flourish. In many ways, we're like a plant that needs to be fed well and have good nutrients and soil and water and sunlight. And through that plant actually feeling good and thriving, it starts to thrive on the outside. That's when it starts to grow, when it feels good. And you need to treat yourself in the same way. I'm tired of seeing people who give advice that leads to burnout and unsustainable success. We need more honesty about the nature of our bodies, the nature of our mind. And when we integrate that, that's when we'll have true success. That's what I created the online membership for. If you like these principles, if you like this way of thinking, rather than the hustle, grind, and burnout sort of thinking, then click on the link in the video description. You'll see it there. Check out the online membership. I'd love to have you on board as one of the members.